one thing we've done really well is to ensure that, we, by not building a UI, we create opportunity for distributors. My philosophy is like, if you have 100 problems, to solve 99 of them and give one for smart people to go solve it. Because once you give smart people opportunity, they will go build amazing things. And that's how Kubernetes works.
Yeah.
So the whole notion of like simplicity versus complexity, you really have to think through. It's not simplicity is the answer all the time. It's about, I would say, like, perceived value. Like, what is the value you're providing? And if you create enough opportunity, create great value and create opportunities for smart people to capture the value, and you're going to create an amazing system.
Welcome to Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel, where we explore projects in decentralized finance that are innovating and driving our mission of financial freedom forward. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review Mission DeFi and spread the word by posting a tweet to the show. All opinions expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests are their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Black Knox, Material Indicators, or any other affiliated organizations. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests as an inducement to make a particular investment, follow a particular strategy, or become involved with any project. A project being featured on the show is not an endorsement of that project in any way. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Now, here's Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel.
All right, I'm excited today because we've been talking about this project quite a bit on our daily show. So I'm excited to have with us today Greg Osuri, the founder of Akash and the CEO of Overclock Labs, to kind of talk to us about the really cool and interesting things that they're doing at Akash. But first of all, Greg, if you could quickly tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in programming back when I got started in tech, and tell us kind of about your journey into crypto and then into Akash and what you guys are doing.
Thanks so much for having me, Brad. Super excited to be here. So my background, I've been a programmer for a little over 25 years, 26 years or something. And I would say like last 12, 13 years or so, I've been primarily focused on building developer tools. So I'm a kind of developer that builds tools for other developers to build.
Nice.
I'm a developer's developer.
I like it.
That passion for developers really began about, 2011 when I founded AngelHack. AngelHack became the largest hackathon in the world.
Nice.
About 50 cities and about 150,000 developers coming to our ecosystem.
Awesome.
And I love hackathons. We put hackathons on a map. Like, it was so large that every time we did one, TechCrunch used to write about the hackathon. So the
nice
hackathon TechCrunch wrote about. It was very large, and I, love developers. I made that my mission to help developers, and Akash is just one step in that direction. But really, several companies launched there. A popular one would be Firebase launched it.
Sure.
So there are a lot of good stories that came out of AngelHack. Before that, I began programming, and I grew up in India. I grew up on a farm in India, actually.
Wow.
Without a computer. And I learned how to code in 94 using books and really cool people around me teaching me, validating. So yeah, I would write my code in paper and plan.
Wow.
And I would go validate that next day at a computer lab. You would get like some time to use a computer. So I would carry a bunch of blockaries that I would store my code so I can reference them. This was no GitHubs, there's no internet, right? This is like pre-internet, pre-Windows, in fact, right? Pre-GUI was a thing. I remember when GUI came, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. Wait, that's an exceptional way to learn, actually, if I think about it, right? I mean, I've talked about in the past how, people talk about how fantastic Russian developers are, and I've talked to people before that said that one of the reasons Russian developers do so well is the equipment they had back in the day when I was, starting off in tech was so behind the times. I'm sure it's not that case now, that they had to learn how to optimize their code. But I can really imagine that if you're writing it down by hand the night before, you're really thinking about whether or not this is going to work tomorrow. And so you don't want to lose 24 hours of finding out. That's amazing.
I think I like fundamentals, right? I like fundamental stuff. Anything I do, like I'm a photographer. But I use an analog camera from 94 or like
wow.
Like when I do like medium format, I use a Hasselblad 500 from 65.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I like the purity of, craftsmanship. And there is a sense of expertise that's very deep you gain when you go lower level, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I can still write assembly.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Sometimes break it down to like a DFS or a depth first search algorithm in assembly because it's fun. We really think about what memory and what, the latency between memory and CPU and yada, yada, yada. You really go get it down, right?
Absolutely. And everything is optimized at that point. Right. I wonder if that kind of write it down first would be an interesting way to teach programmers getting started. Anyway,
I like to learn things from basics. Like when I started photography, like basics, camera, like film and lens, right? Like let's start from there. Let's understand physics. I like physics, and even today when I do a lot of math, I like integrals and calculus because it's just so pure to the foundations without any abstraction. But anyway,
that's a great backstory for starting programming, man. That's a first for me.
Then I moved to the States, and several years later, I discovered a big pattern in US has a culture of isolation, right? So a lot of folks don't have a very collaborative culture, at least from my observation.
Right.
Like how I grew up in India, where yes, you would have your books and your code and whatnot, but ultimately it's the people around you that correct you, teach you, guide you, mentor you on the way that made me who I am. So I felt like the level of collaboration was missing, and that led me to found Angel Hack. And Angel Hack, was an incredible way of bringing people together. This is Web 2. And when Web 2 is just booming, it was at 2011 in San Francisco. It was a different time in San Francisco. It was post, 2008, 2009 downfall, and San Francisco is just coming back, and really pure play Web 2 was brewing. So I was part of that revolution and founded a company and found a new technology stack called Linux containers. This is in 2013. And a company called Docker. Docker, I was a wrapper around containers, and I got super excited because it was made containers super easy to use, but it lacked fault tolerance. So I started working on another project I found called Kubernetes, 2014. So, the founder, it was really fascinating. It was a Google project, and I was working on a different Google scheduler called Omega Scheduler to make fault-tolerant containers. And I found this project, I fell in love with it, and started doing, work around contributions to this incredible project. And then I founded a company called Overclock Labs to take Kubernetes to market.
Nice.
Before anyone heard of what Kubernetes was. For context, Kubernetes today is used by 80% of the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started making a lot of contributions. I was invited to speak at the first conference in Kubernetes. I helped put together what a multi-cloud Kubernetes could look like. We have multiple demos of me doing it online somewhere on YouTube, I suppose. And as we were deploying this, Kubernetes and Docker, when you combine them together, enabled a very incredible workflow to deploy applications that solve for parity, right? Because the big challenge, happened to be for cloud deployments or deployments in general was what you have in your local system doesn't really match what you have on your remote system, right?
Sure.
So when there's like this package missing, that package missing, yada, yada, yada. With containers, you can package all the dependencies and push them together. And with Kubernetes, it has fault tolerance orchestration, so you have a fully production-grade system. So you're still sucked in developer experience, right? It was good enough for developers like us to be able to take this and make something good out of it, right?
Right.
So as we were deploying the solution, we discovered, this was going after users that want high performance. Like the way to get high performance is to go low latency with edge computing or near edge computing, basically going to where your users are. And we have this amazing multi-cloud, almost peer-to-peer edge nodes working together. And we discovered most compute that we were deploying to was unused. So there's an opportunity because, in data centers, when you have compute, you're planning for peak, right? There's a month to put about in a data center. So you always want to address peak capacity. So if you're someone like Intuit or Walmart, like Intuit, for example, is at peak maybe 1 day or 1 week of the year during tax filing season.
Sure.
Most of the year, people are not filing taxes. They're just there, but you still need the capacity to address the one week.
Right.
So that's a common pattern you see quite a lot, especially with retail. And you have Walmart's of the world where you have shopping seasons that are hyper busy at most of the time. And there's another company called Amazon, which had a similar problem. They created cloud computing. You need part of that. So,
Right.
So I saw that opportunity that, hey, there are a lot of companies that have underutilized capacity in the data center sitting idle. And then the idea to create a marketplace came about. And we're designing this marketplace. We wanted to keep it open, or an open source, like as open source people we are.
Right.
Or my work, a lot of my work today is used by Kubernetes and like Kubernetes Helm and HashiCorp Nomad and WFC. And a lot of my open source work is still very actively used by a lot of these projects.
Sure.
And so we're a huge, my co-founder and I, we both are extremely pro open source. So we want to build an open source marketplace. We already had a peer-to-peer model with our edge computing working in 2015, 2016 timeframe. And then we finalized, and the model was something like a BitTorrent style replication or a Git style integrity check or Merkle tree integrity check. So we put Merkle tree and BitTorrent together, we end up with a blockchain.
Right.
How we accidentally ended up on a blockchain.
That's amazing.
Like knowing that we were doing a blockchain. And then we formalized the constructs around blockchain, consensus, and there was this project called Tenure that
Sure.
went on our radar in 2018. It was a framework to build layer ones. And we initially started out with Ethereum as a prototype, and CryptoKitties launched, and that crashed Ethereum. And we were like, okay, this is not suitable to build a high performance infrastructure network. We wanted to go build a layer one, and Tendermint was a great library. And we adopted that in 2018. I had fair share of problems, and then Tendermint eventually became Cosmos. And we were the first project in Cosmos with the first IBC chain. The first IBC transaction means inter-blockchain transaction happened between Akash and Cosmos Hub. And so, we were first to do a lot of these things in terms of like Cosmos tech, in terms of like Kubernetes tech, and long story short, here we are.
That's amazing.
Kubernetes GPU market too. We're the first ones to actually implement because we're running a lot of the upstream code ourselves, right? Like the support is not existent. Right?
Sure. Absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, I love the path, right? I mean, obviously it makes complete sense for where you are. And the progression of that is really fascinating. So tell folks that are listening that have no idea what Akash is or what it provides to the world. Tell us kind of what that is and what you guys envision it becoming, but what it is today and how it's useful.
The simplest way to describe Akash is essentially an open market to trade cloud-grade compute resources. So for folks that have, data centers and, more often than not have unused capacity in those data centers, can trade that unused capacity for Akash credits, which can be used to further scale their capacity. Or folks without data centers looking for lower cost, high quality compute can come to this marketplace and get that compute. The best analogy to describe Akash is something like Airbnb versus Hilton. So Hilton is, you can compare Hilton and Amazon together. Hilton is a place where you can go get standard surveys and standard pricing and consistency for business travel. Great, right? But you go to Airbnb if you want variety, right? Both in terms of price performance, in terms of like quality of compute. So Akash is like Airbnb, whereas Amazon is like Hilton. That's how you really look at. Are they competing with each other sometimes? But are they cooperating with each other? Yeah, I think more often than not, because there's no like rule saying that if you go to Hilton, you can't do Airbnb. It's choose both the options depending on what I'm doing. So Akash gives an alternative market. It is the largest market. We have about 50 providers right now, pre-incentives, and it's growing very quickly. And with incentives, we expect at least 1,000 provider footprint in the next 12 months.
Amazing.
And it will be the most distributed network. I think it's from a regional distribution. Akash is a lot more distributed than Amazon's of the world. But of course, the scale is not yet anywhere close to Amazon.
Right.
But the way we're trending, it's only a matter of time.
So in terms of first of all, the use case is people that need compute and people that have excess compute. And so it's really the processing capabilities of servers that are sitting idle at times, whatever your example earlier of QuickBooks having excess capacity, year round until tax day, whatever, or TurboTax, whatever it was. The use cases so the compute power is accessed directly. How does it work in kind of the context of blockchain, the network, the distribution of this? And if I was coming to buy compute power, how would I go about doing that? And what would it mean to me in terms of, say, pricing, performance, those kinds of things?
Sure. So the tenants are the ones that lease compute power, right? So and providers are the ones that provide compute power. So providers install Akash in their Kubernetes clusters that enables them to participate in the market. The process really begins with tenants describing what they want in terms of resources, in terms of memory, CPU, bandwidth, disk, now GPUs very soon, and IP addresses and a whole lot of other features in terms of uniqueness. It's like a cloud system, right? So you describe the need in this SDL file. If you're technical, it's very similar to Docker Compose file. And more importantly, you say how much you're willing to pay. Price. You set the price as a user.
Okay.
Every topology and set the price. You can set any price you want. And that goes as an order on the blockchain. And the blockchain is essentially an order book.
Okay.
And providers bid on the order, right? And now the tenant gets to choose which provider they want to go with. Usually the provider that matches all the attributes and matches and offers the lowest price.
Sure.
But no guarantee. There's no matching agent. There's only bidding agent, no matching agent. Right. So
right.
Still the tenant. So you get to choose who you want to deploy on. And then once that happens, Akash network goes away. There's a peer-to-peer relationship that's established between the provider and the tenant. Akash network is only used to coordinate and settle. So all the payments go to Akash network, but the deployments are peer-to-peer. So you have a privacy now, right, between your tenant and your provider, because now you have the sensitive data that gets transmission. But blockchain becomes a coordination. And blockchain becomes, and that's pretty much it. And when the lease ends, of course, the order is closed on the blockchain, and that sets the record. And then it disappears for the most part. So it's a very interesting model between like on-chain coordination with off-chain computation.
Right. And so the users who need the compute power really are probably looking for a better deal, I would assume, than if they went straight to an AWS. More value. Okay.
Or like some of them come to us, use a high-performance NVMe storage. Like it's quite a lot of Chia miners use Akash. Right? I think a good portion of Chia actually runs on Akash.
Wow.
All of them are coming because they want high-performance NVMe storage.
Okay.
Not can provide. Like just like Airbnb, right? If you want like a 10-bedroom like villa in southern France, you cannot get that on Hilton Vacations.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, that makes sense. I love that analogy.
Marketplace, right? Yeah. There's super low cost options on Akash. That's like 85% cheaper than Amazon. And they're like super high end options that are actually maybe 2 to 3 times more than Amazon. So it's a very wide marketplace.
That's really fascinating. And then this peer-to-peer connection is really just normal network tunneling connectivity between that they would do in any other circumstance, right?
With overlay network with all security and all that good stuff. But yes, fundamentally it's just a direct connection. And
you guys, and Akash just gets out of the way at that point.
Yeah. You're still using a Akash stack. The blockchain gets out of the way. I mean, you still have Akash software that you use to coordinate. Yeah.
But this isn't like, file storage on chain or anything like that, or compute on chain. This is, we're using the chain for all of the order processing, the matching, and getting everybody together. But then that's what I always wonder about things like this. And I actually had in the back of my head about Akash. I was like, well, how the hell do you provide, like when you guys launch GPU, how does that happen on chain, right? I mean, it just didn't make sense to me. So now it makes complete sense. So that's great.
I mean, general purpose compute can't be on chain. It's just, there's no research, nothing that indicates the GPU compute computation is on chain. Anyone that's telling you on chain GPU computation is complete liar.
Yeah, I can't imagine how that could be. That's why it's just because I didn't take a deep enough dive. And then in terms of I noticed, a number of applications that are deployed by developers on the Akash network. And it seems like there's like this wide variety of things happening there. Can you kind of explain, well, obviously you have a great background in recruiting developers to do things, but can you kind of explain what the ecosystem, how that ecosystem works, what developers are creating, and what value they bring to what you guys are offering?
So Akash network user experience is non-custodial and very developer focused. Like it's so developer focused. We haven't built a web UI, but there are like 8 different clients for Akash, right?
Nice.
All the way from like CloudMoss, which is the most popular one, Fleek, and a few, this company Fleek, which is popular in Web3, like the Web3 Verso, and they're building a front end for Akash, right?
Okay.
So you have like a diverse set of front ends. Akash is API only product. So that limits as to who really uses, and it's very, Web3 experience for now. And so proportionally, there's a lot more Web3 companies that are protocols that use Akash. I think supposedly about 30% of Cosmos actually runs on Akash now.
Wow.
So a lot are like Cosmos and Chia and whatnot.
Wow.
Like Osmosis runs the front end on Akash. Mars protocol, which is released today, which is making a lot of waves, released on Akash to the front end. Juno Network runs a lot of Stargaze network runs on Akash. I mean, a lot of like Cosmos projects on Akash. Akash being the first Cosmos chain and having that sort of like that ecosystem effect, right?
Right.
Now we're seeing quite a lot of AI applications, right? I mean, a lot. I mean, even though GPUs are like a few months away, people are just so excited about it. They're doing integration and waiting for GPUs to get turned on, right? So we anticipate AI is going to be a lot more prominent, like deployments for Akash, just from cost factor, right? I mean, if you want, I don't know how familiar are you with like creating an inference for AI, especially with with LLMs, large language models. They proportionally, they're really good at running on high-end GPUs like A100s or NVIDIA A100s,
Right.
which are really hard to buy. On Amazon, they cost about $4 per hour. On Akash, it costs about $1 an hour. So it's very, very attractive, right?
Yeah.
And these are pretty expensive boxes. So this obviously just for AI for Akash.
That's amazing. Well, look, I think you tweeted about that the other day that you all were really going hard after the AI market. And obviously we all know the level of hype we're experiencing around AI, but I think we're at that, whatever you want to call it, tipping point or whatever, that this is a dramatic sea change, which puts you all in a really interesting place for pulling off access to GPU resources as everyone and their dog wants it.
And we've been talking about GPUs for 3 years, right? It's not something that we came up overnight.
Right. Oh, wait, look, everybody's popular. Let's do it.
Everybody, like people look at it like, oh, look, Akash is doing AI because everybody's doing AI. Like, I mean, have you seen our GitHubs? Have you seen our source code? Have you seen our Twitter feed that we talked about AI for like 3 years? Now, finally, overnight success seems overnight, right?
It's always that way. Yeah.
Always that way. It's like
you're the bandwagon group. There you go.
Yeah, it's always like that. It's amazing. Like, yeah, you get all the years of nights and weekends of working on the stuff or dragging myself for like 13 hours of hackathons and AI hackathons and like all that stuff, right? Anyway.
Yeah, it's crazy. Developers that are building apps in the space, their job, what they're trying to do is create applications for helping access the marketplace, or are they building applications in specific verticals that are targeting specific, whether it's GPU for AI or GPU for something else or CPU for something else? What kinds of things, what is their goal when they're building an application? To be kind of the connector and provide the interface that helps people find what they're looking for? Is that the primary concept behind it?
Yeah, I mean, there's heavy verticalization happening right now because Akash being general purpose is general purpose. That means it's going to be good at everything, not great at one thing, right? So that's why you need verticalization in order for adoption. That's really the only way. So we have Fleek is obviously very clear Web3 vertical. They're really good, like from a user experience standpoint, and Akash is really good from a backend and capability standpoint and stability standpoint, right? So, sorry, speak slower.
No, you're fine.
So Fleek is obviously verticalizing for Web3. Speron is like verticalizing for Polygon. CloudMoss is more Cosmos. We have another Praetor. I believe they're doing provider side of things. They have a whole business model around provider onboarding and management for providers for Akash. We have two big announcements that we're making. Those are mainstream, like Web2 folks.
Oh, wow.
Guys, I mean, stick NDAs, but within like 2 months, you probably see that big integrations.
Okay.
But one thing we've done really well is to ensure that, we, by not building a UI, we create opportunity for distributors. Because my philosophy is like, if you have 100 problems to solve 99 of them and give one for smart people to go solve it. Because once you give smart people opportunity, they will go build amazing things. And that's how Kubernetes works.
Yeah.
So the whole notion of like simplicity versus complexity, you have to think through. It's not simplicity is the answer all the time. It's about, I would say, like, perceived value. Like, what is the value you're providing?
Right.
And if you create enough opportunity, create great value and create opportunities for smart people to capture value, and you're going to create an amazing system.
Well, and it's an ideal system, right? I mean, first of all, you and your partner have spent your careers attracting and recruiting and getting developers to do things, right? So you already know that market. You know what appeals to them. You are a developer's developer. And so it makes sense for you to focus on that fundamental infrastructure, those fundamental pieces that they need to build a business around. And it's got to be really compelling to these developers that are signing up that have a vertical that they want to go after because that's their world. That's what they
Yeah.
know. To have all of that dealt with by you and to be able to build a business layer on top of that is fantastic. How are they? We didn't get into kind of the model for compute providers. I'm assuming there's some kind of token model that they get paid via the system that way, thus pushing up the value of Akash and in the market. The people who are building, are they building in, subscription models? Are they getting a piece of the revenue that's generated for Akash in general? How does that work?
So the Akash blockchain is governed by the Akash token. And Akash token is the native token. AKT token is the native token for Akash network. But its primary goal is to secure the Akash network, Akash being layer 1.
Right.
So the proof of stake consensus mandates a token. So it secures the Akash network, and it is the primary value exchange. Now, since the value of AKT is proportional to the security of Akash network, it's inherent to the protocol that the value grows organically and gradually with the demand.
Sure.
So there's a value capture mechanism for the token itself. There is a small service fee for the token that goes to security budgets or incentive budgets that's used to maintain a network, essentially. Right? It's all on chain. It's all value captures on chain. So as an AKT holder, when you stake, you get a portion of revenue from there. And obviously now AKT is a volatile currency, so it's great for like short-term jobs, but not so good for like long-running jobs, right?
Right.
So there are new proposals now to incorporate stable currency with higher taxes, essentially.
Okay.
So stable currency, but you pay a tax for AKT because without the tax, AKT can't secure.
Right.
Because that gives security to the blockchain. Without security, there's no blockchain. So there's like very circular dependency on the value of the token and the growth of Akash network. So the verticalization is happening, have few different models. I think CloudMoss is doing a subscription model.
Okay.
And some of them are doing like pay per usage model. And it really varies. And, these companies can capture value through holding AKT and, staking AKT, but I think they're also like charging an additional premium on top of that.
Sure. Makes sense.
So it's degrees. So it's very
great. There's a lot of variety there.
A lot of variety, right? And the token is inherently, I think we've done quite a lot. Now, with the recent proposal, we're innovating quite a lot on what it means for token security and what it means to optimize the security budget and optimize the incentive budgets, right? So we're exploring quite a lot. I mean, we have incredible people helping us with this. David Shea, I don't know if you know him, but he's a Stanford professor. He helped Ethereum move from proof of work to proof of stake. He saw like two of the critical problems in Beacon Chain when it comes to security consensus. So he's a security expert, blockchain security expert. And he had an interesting proposal of using Bitcoin to secure Akash. So use some of and of course the trade-off is latency, right? Bitcoin is very slow. Sure. But you can actually really think about it like, okay, can you offload some of the security to Bitcoin? And, can you have what you call selective security instead of having a homogeneous secure layer? Because so far we don't think of blockchains. When you look at security, we assume a homogeneous layer, just like we were doing for like Ethereum gas fees, right? Like if you're moving $1 million versus moving $10 on the chain, you should have different security budgets, right? Like you don't have to pay the same amount of money for moving $10 versus moving $100, right?
Sure.
Moving $1 million. So like you don't see that real world. Why do we assume everything has to have the same level of security in blockchain? So we're working on a lot of the security budget optimization so that we can optimize for more incentives, so that we can actually, understand how much, tax should be paid, we capture and whatnot. So there's a lot of innovation happening with like shared security versus sovereign security and the Cosmos ecosystem that Akash is leading the way.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, that'll trickle out through all the other folks who are building layer ones through Cosmos as well, right? I mean, at least the experiment will be seen.
Mesh security.
What's that?
We're also helping build the mesh security, which is like a new shared security model
that's
been proposed in the Cosmos ecosystem. Cosmos again is like wonderful and diverse, and you have so many different like models that all came up organically or all compete in a healthy way. And that's what makes it beautiful, because there's no centralized company Cosmos that coordinates everything. Right. It's a more decentralized set of like projects that come together and share the same code base and like, carefully value the opportunity and pick the winners out. It's incredible being Cosmos.
It sounds like an amazing ecosystem to work in. Is Akash? I would assume that Akash is one of the largest Cosmos ecosystem players now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I believe like ranked. I mean, I think market cap wise, I think it's being ranked at some sub 300. It's a little above a Juno network in terms of market cap, and below Osmosis. I mean, or Secret Network. I would say it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay. But you guys theoretically, it sounds like on the provider side and the developer ecosystem side, and then the end customer side, you're not even like at full launch here. It sounds like your expectation is significant more growth on all aspects of the marketplace.
Absolutely. So one thing we did really well, which I'm very proud of, which is a hard way to do it, but we did a good job at it, is not add incentive. Okay. Like we have pure value exchange. So we have about 50 providers.
Wow.
Without incentives.
That must have been so tempting.
Yes. It's like very hard decision. I think we did a good job. And our thesis was you got to add incentives post product market fit, not pre market fit, or else you'll end up in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. Because you see DeFi quite a lot. It's very interesting. You have like token rewards for LPing. And when you look at a protocol, I look at what's the cost, in terms of emissions, in terms of tokens,
right,
to pay, versus how much revenue you're making in terms of LP fees, right? So if that is negative, that means you got to get to product market fit as quick as possible. If it's positive, it's great. Like Uniswap doesn't pay any incentives, right? And that's amazing.
Right.
Product market fit. And you have a lot of other, DeFi degen projects that are overpaying sometimes for incentives without matching liquidity, matching LP fees to show for. So I was very adamant on let's not jump the gun here. Let's wait for product market fit, only then turn on incentives. And now we have PMF. The way PMF looks like is when you have users banging on your door asking for new features, that's product market fit. Like sometimes these users will go themselves. Sometimes they'll actually go on companies to verticalize Akash, because they see opportunity. Right? That's product market fit. And now we're like, okay, there's a mismatch because when you have a two-sided marketplace, the big challenge in the early days is mismatch in terms of liquidity, right? So you don't have the same kind of capacity that users want and vice versa, right? Users want, NVMe storage, right? There's an NVMe storage, but you have all these providers, right? So the incentives now are designed around the data we collect, not pre-data, right? Now we have, a challenge we can solve is provider mismatch or resource mismatch, for example. Now we can be like, hey, a lot of the users want A100s. Now we can go incentivize A100 specifically to cover Akash because we know the users want because of the need for it.
Because you have the market demand. That's beautiful.
So now you can create a very incredible, very clean incentive design without wasting tokens. Or else you're going to make a bunch of degens rich and one of your protocols is going to end up being a degen protocol, right?
Right.
You want a protocol to be used by real users. And you don't want incentives to go towards quote unquote investors, right? Investors should profit based on real usage, but not from mismanaged token treasuries, mismanaged token budgets that are incentivizing people for providing LP. That's not, what are you really meant?
Exactly. And it makes complete sense, right? I mean, you're going to have that need in the market. You're going to want people to spin up resources that are in demand, and you have the data to say, I need more of this, right? And now you're giving people a reason to spin up the resources because of the incentives, but it also gives them a role in the whole ecosystem, right? It makes them part of what you're doing, which, it could be just these displaced providers that are just connecting up and let it run, have some bot that's automating on the offers or whatever, and never pay attention to it. But at that point, now you're giving people a reason to say, wait a minute, what else can I do here?
Yeah, exactly. So we're excited. We studied quite a lot about incentive models. We looked at Helium. Helium had to pull an incredible feat to realign the incentives because the incentive was over-incentivized in the early days for the hotspots to a point there was so much more supply than the demand could meet, right? So now they're doing very hard pivot into Web, into 5G. But if you ask me if they would have had incentives now, I mean, again, Monday morning quarterback, right? If you ask me, it'd be far more optimal to deploy incentives now because now they know the need versus pre, right? They know that. Filecoin is doing very interesting incentivization to Filecoin Plus. Again, it's hard to say whether it is product market fit because, but there's definitely incentives that drive their growth. And you see a lot of that. You see a lot of the networks, like in different stages of incentivization, how that created the kind of outcome they have. So we've been studying quite a lot. And with this model, we're very confident that, it could be better models that come in the future. But I think given the information that we have, I think this is the way to go, I think. And it'll set a new standard in terms of incentive distribution.
Well, look, I mean, the beauty of this space is we're all learning on everyone else's mistakes or successes, primarily mistakes as we go along, right? So you had the opportunity to see that these pre-incentive models eventually have to collapse on themselves. And so that's fantastic that you all thought through it and made a model that's different.
I saw this quote somewhere that said, let's make better mistakes tomorrow.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. When you talk to people in the Web 2 world about this thing, do you talk about this? Is blockchain part of the conversation, or is the conversation, this is a marketplace where you can get the resources you need and have providers competing against each other to give them to you?
Not necessarily. I don't use unnecessary buzzwords when you call that.
Sure.
Right? Like just like when you use Uber, you don't talk about the internet, right? So it's like when I approach like an AI user, they don't care about blockchain or decentralization. They care about low cost, high quality resources, right?
Right.
So I try to keep my messaging as clean and straightforward as possible. Depending on who I talk to, if I talk to a Web2 dev, it's ask me to describe it, say Akash is the spot market for the globe. That's what it is, right? So, like you go to Amazon spot market, it's Amazon specific, Akash is global specific. Global, right? So, and you immediately get it. Like, okay, a spot market, they understand how it works. They understand the trade-offs between on demand and the spot market. They understand the advantages. And I don't have to go into detail explaining how it works. So I try to use least amount of words to describe the value prop in the quickest manner possible. But if I
that's awesome.
Understand, permissionless and non-custodial, runs on a peer-to-peer model, it's just going to go over people's head.
I find it really interesting, and I would probably be chomping at the bit, this idea that you've really created this infrastructure and that you're basing this on APIs and that you're not providing an interface to a marketplace yet. Do you expect that someday you will, or is this really, you are planning to have the ecosystem, the developers creating applications in the space to be your front end, to be your introduction?
No. So we left, we actually, there's an open source project now that's coming from the Overclock team that built so Overclock is a company that built Akash Network, right? We have several other companies working on Akash right now. Overclock has also built a open source UI that, it's open source. Actually, it's not GA, it's fully open source. So, but I don't know if you saw my my tweet yesterday.
No.
That talked about something in AI. So Overclock Labs is, if you want to build the best AI development environment with an intense focus on developer experience. There are a lot of problems in AI, developer experience-wise, that needs to be solved, and we're at a critical juncture right now. And Akash has got the foundational cost model that's great to deliver incredible user experience. So yes, we are building something that's going to deliver the best user experience for AI users. It's not Web3. It's not meant for Web3 users. It's not meant for mainstream users. It's very AI-specific users, right? And we believe AI is if you think about Web3, it's incredible to attract supply because Web3 it has an amazing incentive model, amazing network effects, amazing distribution mechanism to attract supply, but terrible at delivering value. The products are not anywhere close to usable, right?
Right.
So, the AkashNet AI is going to solve the delivery problem as well. So
interesting.
With the Web3 as supply, AI as a demand, I call it. So
wait a minute. You said supply AI as what?
Web3 as a supply, AI as a demand.
Nice.
The demand is, I don't know if you saw the recent ChatGPT numbers. They reached 1 million users within 5 days and 100 million users within 45 days.
It's amazing.
On the growth of demand,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. Does that mean Akash goes beyond GPU? Is that what you're getting at here in terms of what will be available on the AI front?
You can't just give GPUs and expect people to use it. For sure. probably are people that would go raw GPU guys. You got to offer a usable platform. I mean, a lot of times you talk to AI folks, right? They're not operations folks. They're not,
right.
I mean, they're Python people. They don't know how to write shell code. They don't do DevOps. That's not their thing. Like a lot of them are data scientists. They just need an API endpoint to work with. And a lot of them actually, like now, a lot of JavaScript folks, a lot of front-end folks building really cool apps on AI. So the user experience demand for them is so high level in terms of what they need. Giving them like a Docker container to work with is not going to be great.
Get them what they need.
Unlike a lot of on the ground, like DevRel work enough to understand the pain points of using a API only product.
Right.
But API only launch it's not new. I mean, Amazon launched API only, AWS, right? If you think about it, I was one of the first users of AWS in 2006 and 2007, where we had the storage product, the S3 product was API only, right? Like, but that attracted developers. And before they had a web UI, it was like a long time ago. Like they were having command line API for a while. So
this explains this incredible, I don't like to talk price, but just this mountain that the price of AKT climbed over the last 24 hours or the last few days is related to probably that strategic move. That's powerful. That's pretty amazing that you guys are.
I don't know why people are excited about Akash, but it's cool to see people excited about Akash. I didn't say anything. I don't think I gave out anything. I put it in.
You're the master of the hints. I love it.
Only thing I said my else one is an emoji. Nothing else.
Wow. All right. Is there anything in general terms else? Has there been anything kind of surprising to you that, or interesting or novel that people are developing in terms of the verticals or in the ecosystem?
I think more than that, like if you look at Akash's model, a big change we did was go radically open, radically decentralized in the sense. So far, till like last year, our source code was open from the get-go, right? Right. Everything that touches users has been open from the get-go from Akash. But the process to create the source code was not, right? We still had a very traditional model of Overclock Labs with its own PMs, its own stakeholders, defining the roadmap, defining the spec. And eventually we'll get to the source code will be open, but the process was still opaque.
Right.
We went radically open in the sense we open source the process itself because it was critical in order for Akash to really reach its potential, it needs to have an completely open model.
Sure.
To a point that Overclock employees, everything we do except for personal issues is open. Like all our discussions are open, right?
Wow.
In fact, I wrote a proposal for Akash economic model, a new one. I didn't share it internally first. I shared externally.
Nice.
I invited our employees to comment externally if they have concerns. So only personal issues are private and HR issues, but everything else is like completely public. And that enabled us to tap into incredible resources. So right now, there are about 229 active contributors to Akash.
Wow.
Of which 20 of them belong to Overclock Labs.
Wow.
So 90% of contributors for Akash Network are outside the company that created Akash Network.
That's awesome.
Well, that just tells you the kind of decentralization, the kind of openness, and the risk factor for decentralization, which happens to be this foundational labs delivering or driving a lot of the roadmap, is now gone. Right? Like Overclock can disappear today, and Akash will still operate. And we also went further, step into creating an on-chain funding model. We have something called a public goods pool. We call it PGP. We have a public goods pool now as part of the proposal that is funded by the revenue share and the inflation rewards that we get. So, and it's completely managed on-chain. It doesn't have a PM, doesn't have like a fund coordinator or whatnot. But we established a framework saying that these are some of the things that you should consider before you're accepting funding or not. And so we created a self-sovereign system in terms of being able to evolve and also being able to incentivize growth as well. So really proud of that model.
That's very cool. You've worked with a lot of developers over the years, startup founders, people building at your hackathons. What things are different for you kind of in the blockchain space, and what advice would you give folks that are trying to create innovative and different strategies in this world that you've either learned in the past that still apply or that you've encountered as you've gone through Akash?
I have something positive. I have something negative. What do you want to go first?
Oh, let's go with negative first, end with the positive.
Okay. Negative. There's an incredible amount of intellectual dishonesty. Incredible level. To a point, I think it starts from the top and it trickles down to the community. Right?
Wow.
So the founders a lot of them seems legit, but they're, dishonest in terms of messaging. Either they're like hiding their truth or trying to screw the message to a point where they want to drive the community, influence the community in talking the way, right? When you go see comments like Bitcoin solves world hunger, right? Like things of that nature, it's just not attractive looking from the outside.
Yeah.
Even the Akash people, it's an outage for Amazon. People, Akash community goes and like, oh, Akash can solve it. I had to jump in and be like, no, it's not going to solve that problem. It's solve other problems.
Right.
But that honesty, I think, that dishonesty is giving us as an industry a bad name and hurting people. Right?
Yeah.
Because wrong misinformation gets passed away, and the founders are like, oh, it's not my fault. It's a community member doing it. And it's just like this denial of what's actually happening has to change. Right?
Yeah.
So,
and that deniability to the community is horrible. It comes from the messaging that the founders put out there in the first place. Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And either people, sorry, real quick, either people get burned after the fact because they believed the BS, or people hear it and think that's total BS, right? Which either way, it's harmful to everything we're trying to do. Yeah.
Either harm now or harm later. Right?
Exactly. Makes sense.
Time, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I like to practice in Akash is radical, openness and radical honesty. So if you look at all our meetings now, all our product meetings are completely public. If you go to our GitHub, if you go to Akash,
love that.
GitHub.com/Akash-network/community, you'll see different community groups that talk about products. And we have a group called SIG Clients specifically talks about friction points for using Akash.
Wow.
Very specifically, very clearly, fully on the record. And Akash is great, but Akash has problems, right? And the first step in order to improve the system is to acknowledge the problem and do so in a fully radically open way so you don't have nothing to hide. Right?
That's awesome.
I think it gives our community a lot of strength in terms of being honest intellectually.
There's a protocol called Teller that's an Oracle protocol on Ethereum. And I just interviewed the founders, and I'm on their YouTube channel. And the week before, they had suddenly decided that they were going to kind of do this openness thing for themselves. And there was a 45-minute meeting, wouldn't even call it a meeting, where they were discussing their marketing strategies. And it was painful, but at the same time, I kind of was like, this is amazing that they're doing this, right? Like that they're exposing the fact that they have no idea on this topic what they want to do, but that they were willing to put it out there. So that's really cool to see you guys are taking it to that level of openness. It's amazing.
It's important because that leads to my next point of the strength for crypto is its openness. The strength of crypto is the network effects and the community, right? And I call community is a competitive mode, right? That's really where you got to understand. And the way you unlock community is through radical openness. Because the more barriers you remove for trust, the higher network effects you get.
Yep.
Right? You remove barriers of trust by being radically open. Right?
Yep.
If you have very few things to hide, you have very few things to mistrust. Right?
That's right.
Good or bad, just be open about it.
Exactly. And that disputes so many people, and this goes back to your negative point, so many people in this space believe that they have to be this hype machine for the price and for the distribution and to get people doing liquidity and everything else, when in fact, ultimately what it always leads to is the disintegration of the community, right? And so your point is incredibly valid, because the more brutally honest you are about the bad and the good, the less likely people are going to be to feel disillusioned, lied to, and have less trust. So sorry to interrupt you, but that just really hits me.
Projects that embrace the openness and embrace the network effects, you really like crypto is incredible coordination mechanism. I haven't seen anything this level in terms of coordination efficiency like crypto experience. Like I've built large scale systems like with angel hacks and like large scale social systems, right?
Right.
See and know the complexity that the coordination brings in, right? Especially closed source coordination, right?
Sure.
Well, closed source is actually like gives a lot more control, but way harder to manage because there are a lot of secrets. So when you have fully open, it actually you're gonna learn how to like release the control and like empower people versus trying to keep everything. So it's a different way of thinking how you scale systems. And the ones that embrace the chaos, embrace the lack of control, they embrace the freedom that you get with open systems are going to be successful. And I think more people should see from that angle. It's just very refreshing from a crypto standpoint. And this is the kind of stuff like, when you look at large companies, they don't have this level of openness. They can't.
No, they can't do it. They can't do it.
It's just not part of the DNA, right? So now we have an incredible opportunity to create radically open systems, right? So let's do it. And that's the kind of stuff people envy about. And all of us, we work for large companies, myself, to experience what a closed source system, an open source system looks like. So if anything, I want to build is open systems and go radically open.
Well, I love that you guys are pushing those barriers as well. I say this all the time. The competition in this space is critical and the experimentation is everything. I mean, we are dramatically increasing the pace of change in organizational change. And so that kind of experimentation has a big impact. It's hard to see where that goes wrong. You know what I mean? It's really hard to see where radical openness becomes a bad thing. I'm sure there are examples, but for the most part, I think it outweighs in
principle, it doesn't go bad thing. It really comes down to how you organize those communities and like it comes down to communications. A lot of things that could go wrong.
Sure.
The way you do it, but I mean, there are a lot of people who do it really well. So
that's great. Last question, and I'll let you go. I've already taken up too much of your time because I was late. So appreciate your patience. A project or person in the space that you admire a great deal or that you think has been incredibly important to pushing blockchain or even the world that you came from, Kubernetes and Docker and hackathons, somebody that you just have a great deal of respect for and that you think has done a great job advancing the space.
I would say SVF. Just kidding. That's a great deal of respect. Huh? I mean, I respect a lot of folks in the space. I think, like if I had to pick one, I hate picking names because I don't idolize people, but I do.
Yeah, I don't either. But
I'll pick Vitalik, to be honest with you. I think he's one of those few people that is very honest intellectually.
Yep.
And has a lot of class. And, he's fantastic intellectual human being. Even though I'm not a Ethereum user, I love Ethereum, what they've done. And I use Ethereum, of course I use, but I'm not a big fan of like the product per se, but I admire the Ethereum ecosystem, what Vitalik in personal has done. I'm not a big fan of like idolize, like,
yeah, me either.
Idols, like Cosmos doesn't have an idol, right? There's no single person who can say that's Cosmos. So we have a very decentralized ecosystem. But yeah, and Anatoly Yakovenko from Solana, good friend of mine, I respect him very deeply. He's super honest. I think he comes in Vitalik level as well.
Nice.
So a lot of folks I have a lot of deep respect for.
Do you worry your community will idolize you?
My community doesn't idolize. I mean, I set it up in a way that it shouldn't.
Well, and look, the more open and honest you are and the more you all push towards the community, the less likely that'll happen. So that makes a ton of sense.
But there's another problem. The more open and honest you are, the more influence you get. So
yeah, that's true too. Well,
it'll
be interesting watching you balance that. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for your time. I'm really appreciate the education I got today about what you're building. And I think you're solving a number of problems and advancing a number of things, not only in this space, but in general in the tech world. So I really appreciate everything you're doing and you've done. And I appreciate your time today. So thank you very much.
Right. This was wonderful.
Thanks.